You allow things to develop at their own pace without interfering with them at every step, and in that space something inside you begins to settle, not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because you're no longer fighting what you cannot shape. And when that resistance fades even slightly, you start to notice something that was always there but hidden beneath the noise: your ability to act clearly without forcing anything, your ability to move without dragging the weight of expectation. Behind every step, your ability to stay grounded, even when things are uncertain. Most people never reach this point because they mistake tension for progress. They believe that if they are not constantly thinking, adjusting, worrying, then they must not be doing enough. But the truth moves in the opposite direction. Clarity doesn't come from pressure. It comes from stillness. It comes from knowing exactly what is yours to do and letting the rest unfold without interference. There's a quiet discipline in this kind of thinking. Attracts. Not loud, it doesn't demand attention from others, it doesn't need validation, it tracks internal and steady like a foundation that doesn't shake every time something unexpected happens. And once you begin to build that foundation, everything else starts to feel different. Not easier, but cleaner. More direct, less tangled in unnecessary complexity. You begin to approach your work with a different mindset, to focus on what can actually be done instead of what might happen. You give your full attention to the task in front of you instead of dividing it between action and worry. And because of that, your effort becomes sharper, more effective, not because you are doing more, but because you are doing it without internal resistance. This shift shows up in small moments. First, the way you respond to delays. Instead of immediately reacting with frustration, you pause. You recognize that the timing was never yours to control, and you return to what you can do next. The way you handle uncertainty. Instead of filling the space with assumptions, you allow it to exist without needing to resolve it instantly, and that alone removes a surprising amount of pressure over time. These small shifts begin to compound. Your mind becomes quieter, not empty but focused, not overwhelmed but clear. You stop chasing reassurance because you no longer feel unstable without it. You stop overanalyzing every step because you trust your ability to adjust when necessary, instead of trying to predict everything in advance. And with that comes a kind of freedom that is difficult to describe until you experience it directly. It's not the freedom of having everything go your way. It's the freedom of not needing it. This is where many people hesitate, because letting go of control can feel like stepping into uncertainty without protection. It feels like giving up something important, but in reality, you are not losing control. You are returning it to the only place it ever truly existed: your own actions, your own responses, your own presence in each moment. Everything else was never stable to begin with. It only appeared that way because the mind was trying to hold it in place. When you understand that deeply, not just intellectually but through experience, your relationship with effort changes. You still care about what you are rebuilding, but you are no longer consumed by it. You still aim for progress, but you not defined by how quickly it happens. You still engage with life fully, but you no longer trying to force it into a fixed shape. There's a calm intensity in this way of living, a kind of focus that doesn't rely on pressure, a kind of discipline that doesn't require constant tension. You move forward with clarity, not because you removed all uncertainty, but because you stop trying to eliminate it, and in that acceptance, something unexpected begins to happen. Your actions start to align more naturally with your intentions. You make decisions with less hesitation because your mind is no longer crowded with competing outcomes. You notice opportunities more clearly because your attention isn't scattered across imagined scenarios. Even your energy feels different, more consistent, less drained by things that were never yours to carry in the first place. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. They don't. Life continues to move in ways that are unpredictable, sometimes difficult, sometimes frustrating, but your position within that movement changes. You're no longer reacting to every shift as if it defines your ray. Engaging with it from a place that remains steady regardless of how things unfold, that steadiness becomes your advantage, not in the sense of control, but in the sense of clarity. You see situations as they are not as you fear they might become. And because of that, your responses are more precise, more grounded, less driven by impulse or anxiety. The ratch, a moment where this way of thinking stops, feeling like something you act, repracticing, and starts feeling like something you are. It becomes natural to focus on what is seen in front of you. It becomes natural to let go of what isn't as seen. It becomes natural to move without carrying unnecessary weight. And when that happens, life begins to feel lighter, not because it demands less from you, but because you are no longer demanding the impossible from it. You stop asking life to be predictable. You stop asking outcomes to be guaranteed. You stop asking other people to respond in exactly the way you expect, and in return, you gain something far more valuable. You gain stability that doesn't endeavor any of those things. This is the quiet strength the Stoics pointed toward, not a dramatic transformation, but a subtle shift in perspective that changes everything beneath the surface. Itasi is the difference between pushing against the current and learning how to move with it without losing your direction. Once you see that clearly, you can go back to the old way of thinking because you recognize the cost of it, the constant tension, the unnecessary pressure, the endless cycle of trying to control what was never yours to manage. Instead, you begin to refine your focus. You ask simpler questions. What is in my control right now? What is the next clear step? What can I do without overcomplicating it? And those questions guide you forward more effectively than any attempt to predict the entire path. It's a quiet confidence that grows from this, not the kind that needs to be displayed or proven, but the kind that comes from knowing you can handle whatever arises because you're no longer depending on things outside of you to remain stable. You trust your ability to respond rather than your ability to control, and that trust changes how you move through everything from your work to your relationships to your own internal dialogue. Even failure starts to feel different. It's no longer something that threatens your sense of self. It becomes information, something to learn from, something to adjust around, without turning it into a personal weight you have to carry. And success no longer creates pressure to maintain it at all costs. It becomes something you experience fully, without immediately worrying about losing it, because your foundation isn't built on the outcome. It's built on how you showed up to reach it. This balance is what most people are actually searching for when they chase control. They want certainty. They want stability. They want to feel grounded, but they look for it in places that cannot provide it. And when those places inevitably shift, they feel unsettled again. But once you redirect that search inward, once you place your stability in something that doesn't fluctuate with circumstances, everything begins to stabilize in a way that feels real, not temporary, not dependent on perfect conditions. You begin to see that life was never meant to be controlled in the way you once believed it was meant to be experienced, engaged with, responded to with clarity and intention, not managed down to every detail. And in accepting that you don't become passive, you become precise. You stop wasting energy on what you cannot influence, and you invest it fully in what you can. That shift may seem small on the surface, but it changes everything underneath. It changes how you think, how you act, how you experience each moment, and over time it shapes the direction of your life in ways that no amount of forced control ever could. So the next time you feel that familiar tension building, the urge to fix everything, to predict everything, to hold everything in place, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this mine to control, or am I reaching beyond what is actually in my hands? And if the answer is clear, let it go, not out of carelessness, but out of understanding. Return your focus to what is yours. Take the next step with clarity and allow the rest to unfold without resistance, because the moment you stop trying to control everything, is the moment you finally begin to move freely.